Have you ever been in a conversation, a relationship, or a job where every single interaction feels like a chess match you just can't win? You know, where being totally honest only seems to make things 100 times worse? Well, today, we're diving deep into a really powerful and kind of counterintuitive strategy for navigating exactly those kinds of high-pressure dynamics. This isn't about winning an argument or getting the last word in. Nope, it's about a much, much bigger prize: reclaiming your own future.
Here it is. The most striking truth about strategic disengagement is that the safest way to leave a high-pressure dynamic is to convince the controller that leaving was their idea. Now, just stop and think about how completely backward that sounds, right? I mean, our culture, our movies, our self-help books, they all scream that closure needs some big, final, honest confrontation. You know, a dramatic breaking of the chains where you finally speak your truth. But here's the twist. In the kind of high-conflict dynamics we're exploring today, that raw honesty is often the very thing that triggers what the source material calls a retaliation spike. And this brings us to a huge question, one I bet a lot of you have felt. Why does trying to be the bigger person in an argument so often leave you feeling even more trapped than before? Well, that's the core paradox of the slow fade. It's that light bulb moment when you realize that becoming the most boring, useless version of yourself isn't a defeat. It's the only real path to a safe and permanent liberation.
Okay, so here's something we have to get straight right from the start. This is not about diagnosing anyone's character or slapping labels on people. We're not talking about good guys or bad guys. What we are doing is exploring a framework of observable interaction patterns and reported experiences. We're looking at a strategy, and this image here, it's perfect. It looks like a defeat, right? A broken trophy, a checkmated pawn, but what if that's the whole point? What if the strategy is to gently nudge someone's brain into misinterpreting your evaporation as their victory, when in reality, it's a profound, strategic win for the person who is quietly walking away?
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to tackle the core idea that flips everything on its head, the boring victory paradox. Then we'll get into the psychology of why we get so stuck in what's called the conflict trap. After that, we get practical with the step-by-step mechanics of the three-step fade. And we'll even look at the science of the controller's brain to see why this all works. Then, we'll cover how you can build up your own internal defenses by developing gray rock awareness. And we're going to wrap it all up with the final huge mental shift you have to make, choosing freedom over being right.
All right, let's jump right into our first section, the boring victory paradox. Now that subtitle is key, from resistance to dissolution. We're all conditioned to think that power means being active, right? Pushing back, standing your ground, fighting for your position. Well, this section is where we're going to completely flip that script. We're going to explore why, in certain dynamics, the most powerful thing you can possibly do is to stop resisting and instead start dissolving.
So let's hit that central question again, because it's really at the heart of so much frustration. Why does trying to have that mature, honest conversation, being the bigger person, why does it so often backfire? You've been there. You rehearse what you're going to say. You lay out your feelings calmly, rationally. You're just hoping for that breakthrough, that moment of, oh, I get it now. And yet somehow you walk away from that talk more tangled up, more exhausted, and feeling more trapped than you did when you walked in. The answer's pretty simple. You fundamentally misunderstood the game you're playing. And the source material gives us this absolutely critical term, the retaliation spike. This is the whole key. See, in a healthy back-and-forth dynamic, if you express your needs or set a boundary, it's usually met with some curiosity, maybe a negotiation. It's seen as trying to find a solution. But in a high-pressure dynamic, a direct, honest talk is seen completely differently. It's seen as a direct challenge to authority, a threat to the way things are. So your truth doesn't lead to understanding. It becomes the trigger for an intense, aggressive reaction designed to pull you right back into line and reassert control. This is exactly why the normal path to closure just fails.
And check this out. This table just lays out the strategic shift perfectly. Over on the left, you've got active resistance. That's our default mode, right? We think we're supposed to fight the rules, demand to be heard. But as we just talked about, that usually just triggers a big confrontation and ends up in this high-risk, high-drama cycle that never ends. Now look to the right, passive dissolution. This is the goal of strategic disengagement. Instead of fighting the rules, you aim to make them totally irrelevant to you. Instead of demanding to be heard, you strategically aim to be forgotten. This doesn't trigger a fight, it leads to you being dismissed, which in this situation is the grand prize. You're shifting from a high-risk, high-drama mess to a low-risk path to total freedom.
Okay, let's move on and see how this all connects. Because to escape a trap, you first have to understand how it's built.
It's like you're in a game where you don't know the rules, and you just keep losing and have no idea why. Well, this section is about learning those rules. We need to look at the psychology underneath it all that keeps people stuck in these draining, repetitive loops. Okay, so there's a scientific term for the internal process that makes all this possible. It's called affective neutralization. And look, this isn't about faking it or just bottling up your feelings. It's a real, genuine shift in your thinking. It's where you learn over time to systematically detach emotionally from the drama and the provocations. Think of it like a meteorologist watching a hurricane on a screen versus being stuck out in the middle of it. You still see the lightning, you hear the thunder, but you're not getting tossed around by it anymore. And over time, that neutrality you've cultivated becomes this incredible protective shield. This right here, this defines the main mistake that keeps people stuck. The conflict trap. It's that deep down hopeful belief that if you could just explain yourself one more time, with the perfect words, in the perfect tone, then they would finally get it. It's the chase for that aha moment of empathy that you think will fix everything. But the trap is this: that moment is never going to come, because the dynamic isn't based on a simple misunderstanding. It's often fueled by the conflict itself. And that trap is locked in place by what the source calls retaliation anxiety. This is the psychological cage. It's that constant, nagging fear that guides every move you make. It's that little voice in your head saying, "Don't bring that up, it'll just start a fight," or, "Ugh, just agree, it's easier than dealing with the meltdown." You're walking on eggshells, not because you want to, but to avoid that explosion, the social drama, or that threat of a reputation-destroying exit. That anxiety is a powerful anchor that paralyzes you and makes a clean break feel totally impossible. So the whole point of this section is this massive identity shift. And let's be real, this is not easy. We are wired to want to be understood. The entire goal here is to consciously guide yourself through this change. You have to actively let go of that really deep human need to be seen, heard, and validated by this one person. And instead, you take on a new strategic mission to become so unremarkable, so uninteresting, that you just fade off their radar. Because, in this specific context, being forgotten means being free. Okay, so we get the why, the whole boring victory thing, and we get the what, the psychological trap. So now let's get into the how. This section, the 3-step fade, breaks down the actual, practical mechanics of the escape. And this is so important. This is not about impulsive ghosting or some big dramatic exit. This is a systematic, calibrated process that's designed to minimize retaliation and maximize your safety. So the escape plan, as it's laid out, can be broken down into 3 clear sequential steps. You start by building a new foundation, which is called the gray rock baseline. From there, you begin a really gradual withdrawal process called the slow fade. And all of this leads to the end game, a strategically engineered result called the manufactured dismissal. That's where their boredom becomes your ticket to freedom. So let's break down each one.
Step 1 is all about cutting off the supply line. The source calls this emotional fuel. Now, think about what fuels a high conflict interaction. It's not just anger, it's arguments, dramatic tears, long-winded justifications, frantic apologies, even just your visible frustration. All of that stuff is intense engagement. That's the energy that powers the dynamic. So the gray rock method is about becoming emotionally non-reactive. Like a boring gray rock on the side of the road, you offer nothing interesting to kick or throw. You just stop taking the bait. You don't argue back, you don't break down, and you don't JADE. That's justify, argue, defend, or explain. You simply become unresponsive. Okay, so once you've established that non-reactive baseline, you start the fade. The goal here is to become an unreliable source of that fuel, that energy, that attention. You start to increase the latency. That's the time it takes you to respond to texts or calls. Minutes turn into hours. You become just a little less available for plans. When you do talk, you become, well, boring. Your answers get shorter. You have nothing new to talk about. A lot of people who've used this method say they frame this phase with plausible deniability. They were just so tired from work, feeling overwhelmed, or distracted lately. It's gradual, it's subtle, and this is crucial, it's deniable. It's not a big confrontation, it's a slow, quiet evaporation. And this all leads to the absolutely brilliant final step. See, this isn't you breaking up with them. It's about creating the perfect conditions for them to discard you. Your consistent neutrality and your total lack of emotional fuel, it eventually just makes them bored. And because their system is often wired for high drama, high arousal interactions, that boredom eventually triggers your release. They lose interest, they'll write you off as boring now or no fun anymore, and they'll move on to find a more exciting source of energy.
Now, it might feel like rejection, but it's not. You haven't been rejected. You have engineered your own liberation.
The end state of this whole process, the ultimate prize, is what the source calls sovereign detachment. Think back to that feeling of retaliation anxiety, that constant walking on eggshells. This is the exact opposite of that. It's a state of being where you are truly free, not just physically gone, but psychologically and emotionally untangled. The thought of them no longer gives you that knot in your stomach. And you achieve this profound freedom not by winning a fight, but by successfully becoming irrelevant to the fight itself. So, this all sounds pretty effective in theory, and a lot of people report it works in practice. But why does it work so reliably on a biological level? Let's jump to our next section, the controller's brain, and look at the actual neuroscience that makes this whole strategy tick. If the three-step fade is the art, well, this is the science.
Okay, here's the core science. Incentive salience reduction. I know, it sounds super complex, but it's a fundamental thing our brains do. We are literally wired to pay attention to things that are rewarding, things that give us a hit of dopamine, a feeling of power, or emotional arousal. Think about a new video game or a notification pinging on your phone. It's highly salient. It grabs your attention. Well, when a person, a thing, or a situation stops giving that reward, our brain naturally stops spending attention on it. It becomes less salient. It just fades into the background. By becoming a gray rock, you are actively reducing your own incentive salience in the other person's brain. Neurologically speaking, you're just not a rewarding target anymore.
This quote just reframes the whole experience perfectly. Every single time you choose neutrality over reacting, every time you give a boring one-word answer instead of a long-winded explanation, you are laying down another piece of pavement on your own neuroassociative exit ramp. It's not a single dramatic escape. It's a pathway to freedom that you build for yourself, one consciously uninteresting interaction at a time.
And this contrast gets right to the heart of the internal shift you have to make. The vulnerable mindset is trapped by that need for closure. It's driven by the desperate desire to have the last word, to be understood, to get that final piece of validation that you were right all along. But the strategist mindset, it has a completely different set of goals. Controlled dissolution. Safety becomes way more important than being right. The desire for a final word gets replaced by the desire to just be safe. And the ultimate goal isn't validation, it's to evaporate from the dynamic altogether.
Okay, so knowing the strategy is one thing, but being able to actually recognize these dynamics in the moment and do something about it, that's a whole other ballgame. And honestly, this is often the hardest part. So this section, Gray Rock Awareness, is all about building the internal defenses and the real-time awareness you need to make this work.
This is the first and maybe the toughest question you have to ask yourself. And again, this isn't about blaming or assigning malice. It's a purely functional question. What purpose do your interactions serve in this dynamic? What is the fuel you provide? Are you the reliable audience for their endless monologues? Are you the dependable opponent for that weekly argument? Are you the source of validation when they feel insecure? Answering this honestly, just for yourself, is the very first step toward taking your power back.
The source gives a name to this process of self-reflection, the fuel audit. And this isn't about confrontation. It's just a descriptive tool for your own clarity. You can do it in your head or maybe even write it down. Just look back at the last few big interactions you had. After each one, how did you feel? Drained or energized? Seen or used? Was it a moment of real connection and sharing, or was it more of an emotional extraction where you were the audience, the opponent, or the ego boost? The goal here isn't to judge, but just to see the pattern clearly.
So based on that audit, the goals of developing this new awareness are pretty clear. First, learn to tell the difference between real closeness and emotional extraction in real time. You'll start to feel it in your gut when the shift happens. Second, you start to intentionally practice being unremarkable, but only in those extraction-based interactions. Third, your long-term goal is to prove, through your consistent lack of reaction, that you are no longer a valuable source of fuel for them. And finally, and this is the big one, you reclaim your sovereignty by truly, deeply letting go of the need to be seen or understood by them. This is the mantra. This is the core belief that has to replace that old need for closure. You have to really internalize this idea. I don't have to be seen to be free. It's a profound realization that your freedom, your safety, your well-being, none of it depends on another person's perception of you. You can be completely misunderstood, totally dismissed, written off as boring, and at the same time, be completely and utterly free.
And that brings us to our final section, where we're going to tie all of these strategic and psychological threads together into one really powerful philosophical takeaway.
This is the ultimate mindset shift. It's the final piece of the puzzle. Freedom over being right.
Just let this one sink in for a second, because it goes against every natural instinct we have to connect and empathize. The source material is crystal clear on this. In these specific high-conflict dynamics, the most dangerous, most trapping thing you can possibly do is to keep believing that explaining your pain will lead to empathy or change. In a healthy relationship, sharing vulnerability builds closeness. But in this context, your pain might be the very emotional fuel the whole dynamic runs on. You're not sharing your heart with a friend. You might just be feeding a wolf.
So what's the shield? It's silence. But look, not an angry, punishing silent treatment, not a passive-aggressive silence. We're talking about a strategic, neutral, and disengaged silence. Strategic non-engagement is what breaks the cycle. It starves the fire of oxygen. It interrupts that whole neurochemical loop of provocation and reaction we talked about. It's the shield that protects your inner peace and lets you calmly keep building that exit ramp, one boring brick at a time.
This completely reframes the whole idea of what winning even means. You might lose every single petty argument from this day forward. You might be seen as weak or boring or difficult in their eyes. But none of that matters. You don't have to win the battle to win the war. The war is for your future, your peace of mind, your life. And that life is a private territory. You have every right to decide who gets a key and who has to stay outside the castle walls.
And this is the final crucial choice. It's a value judgment that you have to make for yourself. Do you want that fleeting, temporary satisfaction of proving a point, of getting that last word in, or do you want the lasting, profound peace of genuine safety and freedom? Strategic disengagement is the conscious choice to value your freedom above everything else. It's the art of letting go of the fight so you can quietly and safely walk away into your own life, fade away into your own freedom.